Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, December 21st, 2025 in the space and time continuum. Tonight is the actual winter solstice. The dark lasts the longest tonight. And then we move forward. And I can't wait until June when here in the Northern Hemisphere, we have the most light, the longest period of light. What's the world going to be like then? I think it's interesting that all of this crumbling is happening right now in the longest period of darkness. And then the darkness will start to get shorter and shorter, and the light gets longer and longer. The light is coming in. Return of the sun for the winter solstice celebration period. Now, it is happening. The crumbling is happening right now in these longest of dark nights. It's taking longer than we want, but we can see it happening. Last week I said, what do we do in the meantime? It is crumbling, but what do we do while we wait? Well, we need to still keep thinking about what do we want our world to be like when we get rid of these broken, corrupt systems that have been getting more and more broken and more corrupt for decades. We need to change and basically rebuild everything. So let's you and I together put thought into that, both inside our souls. Don't put too much thought through your head. Feel it. What would you like? What do you think the world should be like? When you think, you get too much into systems. Now, here's some proof about things crumbling. Mitt Romney this week came out with an op-ed where he writes, tax the rich. If we're going to avoid complete economic collapse, we need to tax the rich, people like me, people like Mitt Romney. I am nowhere near the worth of Mitt Romney, obviously. But you've heard me say this before. You can't not be taxed. Like Elon Musk not paying taxes is not right. I think everyone agrees on that, including now Mitt Romney. The guy who's like, corporations are people, my friend. Now Mitt Romney is sounding like a Democrat. Elise Stefanik. She was going to be, I think, the UN ambassador. And then she got pulled from that by Trump. And then she kind of disappeared. She was really speaking up and being a horrible person. Stopping myself from using words I would rather use. And now she was going to run for governor of New York. She is no longer. She pulled out of that race on something like Wednesday or Thursday, and she is retiring from Congress. She's disappearing. Maybe this is also what Susie Wiles, the chief of staff of Donald Trump, is doing. We're going to get to a little bit more of that here. But there are a couple other things. Now, we're going to go through the incredible events of this week as more proof that things, yes, are crumbling all the way down. And this is alongside of Trump's health issues. I have a list of things that happened this week, and Trump's health issues aren't even a part of it. At any moment, I'm sure the people who work in the White House, every last one of them, and the people who have been terrorized by the Donald Trump mob boss figure, is that why they call him the Don? Don Corleone? I'm sure all of those people every morning are disappointed when they find out that Donald Trump his soul is still in his body somehow. He has not left the earth. That's how we'll put it. Now, Todd Blanche, if you don't know who Todd Blanche is, he was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. He's the asshole who was standing next to Donald Trump all those days, not last summer, but the summer before, in 2023, I believe it was, when Donald Trump was on trial over and over again because he was convicted 34 times. He was convicted. So this asshole, Todd Blanche, standing next to Donald Trump, when Donald Trump came out of the courtroom every day, and for some reason the mainstream media couldn't wait to put cameras on him, and he's blathering the same crap every day, Todd Blanche was the smug little asshole standing next to Trump. He was Trump's personal lawyer. What a great lawyer. He lost 34 indictment cases. Wow. Losing side, loser of a lawyer. Now, apparently, he was a legitimate lawyer before that. So anyway, he becomes Trump's losing lawyer. And then Trump appoints him to be Deputy Attorney General. So he's the deputy to Pam Bondi. All right? So Todd Blanche now is being made the face of these Epstein file fake release on Friday. You've been hearing a lot about this, and we'll talk about that. It is on the list, okay? And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the second segment when we go through that list. But it was pretty amazing. Todd Blanche just this morning was unleashed onto all the TV shows, and he put his foot in his mouth on repeat mode, contradicting himself. He said they took the photos down where the victims were in them. So another amazing thing has happened after this fake release of just less than 1% of any of the Epstein files that the DOJ and FBI has. Midas Touch so quickly went through them. This was something that I feel was unexpected by the DOJ. You've heard me talk about the Midas Touch Network on YouTube. Well, Ben Meiselas is kind of the leader of Midas Touch. He himself is a trial lawyer. Well, he has built a network, and they are growing, beating out so many other networks on YouTube who have been doing this same thing about news and commentary. And I mean, they're just exploding. So much so that the Trump administration is trying to attack them. Ben Meiselas he's gotten enough people together that they were able to sift through this stuff very quickly. And they immediately found things that the DOJ apparently missed. So they found pictures of Donald Trump with young girls. And then the DOJ pulled those files, pulled those photos out after the fact. Now, that's something that the DOJ did not expect to have happen. So now everybody can see, right down to the mainstream media Sunday morning political shows are asking him, why did these files disappear? They were released on Friday, and on Saturday they disappeared. And he said, because we're trying to protect the victims. And we found that there were victims in these photos. Now, one of the photos is Donald Trump with young girls. So he is saying that victims were in those pictures and they were asked to pull them down. That's a lie, of course. They pulled it down because Donald Trump was in there in a photo with small girls, and another photo of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein in this open drawer that looked like it was evidence that the FBI had, probably from Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York. Now, if those young women will even give them the benefit of the doubt, possibly, but, probably they're still called girls because they're not yet adults. If they were victims, and then Donald Trump's in a photo with them. I thought Donald Trump's not implicated in any of this. I thought he was not a part at all. And then Todd Blanche says, Donald Trump's not a part of this. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Another thing the Midas Touch Network found was that there was a previous release of testimony transcripts that included Donald Trump's name that were put out years ago. And they're disgusting. I mean, they're just gross and disgusting. This guy, Donald Trump, is a horrible, disgusting puke. He is not a human being. I will not give him that, at least in this moment. Some of the stuff in these transcripts, I'm not going to say them. I'm too embarrassed to say them. They're gross and disgusting, but they show that he has no respect for fellow human beings. There, I just admitted he's a human being, right? He has no respect. He causes pain, physical pain, when whatever he's doing to that person causes him pleasure. That's as far as I'll go in some things that are described in these transcripts. But his name was in the transcripts when they were released years ago, and now they're redacted. Donald Trump's name is redacted. Other people's names, young women's names, possibly girls' names. The person who was giving this testimony was 14 years old when these things happened to her, when Donald Trump did this to her. Yes, it does include the worst, everything you're thinking. This came out years ago in a transcript of testimony by this young girl, and she was called Jane Doe because her name was redacted even in the transcripts years ago. But now some of that's revealed. That's not redacted in the new files, but Donald Trump's name is. So previous files that included Donald Trump's name, now they've released and they do not include Donald Trump's name. Todd Blanche is lying to your face, and it's driving me crazy, as I'm sure it's driving you crazy as well. But we're not gonna be driven crazy by this. We're just not going to be. We're not going to allow ourselves to be. This is what needs to happen. And a lot of people are going to be scared of things that are being revealed, I think, very soon. I feel like this coming week, although it is the winter solstice celebration week, some call it Christmas, I still think some astonishing revelations are going to come about. Some of it is kind of scary because what we're finding out here, Todd Blanche, he's not dumb enough to actually believe what he's saying. He's not dumb enough to think that what he's doing now is not going to decimate his career. He's not dumb enough to think that what he's doing now and what he's been doing for Donald Trump for the last few years is not going to land him in prison. So why is he doing what he's doing? Is he being threatened? And if you think yes, then wouldn't he rather than just like get pushed out a window instead of spend the rest of his life in prison? Or do the threats go further?
Yeah, it'd be a shame if something bad happened to that beautiful daughter of yours. She's so pretty. It'd be a shame to have something bad happen to her. Maybe her and your whole family. Your whole family. It'd be a shame if something happened to your whole family.
I think you see the correlation I'm trying to make here. Who's the mob boss? The guy who supposedly hung himself while being under suicide watch in prison? Or the guy who's still alive? Who's the boss? Who's really running that operation? Because the operation seems to still be going on. The guy whose name is on it has been dead for 6 years. How does that work? This is what I'm talking about revelations coming out that are going to be terrifying to an awful lot of people. Still have a lot to talk about. Let's take a short break. You're listening to A Satellite View. We'll be right back. on a satellite view. Find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Sign up to be on our emailer. Go to YouTube and search for Satellite Podcast and find our YouTube channel. Subscribe, it's free. We're getting a lot more views on clips on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, things like that as well. You can find me on Instagram and those other places at Todd Mikkelson. Let's get the word out. Let's get more people into our little community here. And thank you so much for being here. Let's get back into this. Before we go down the list of things that happened this week that show that the crumbling is happening. It's not when is it going to happen. It is happening. We're in the middle of it. It's excruciating to go through it. It's excruciating because it's taking way too long. And it's driving us crazy. But it is happening. It is happening. Now, this is something interesting that, again, talking about people getting pushed out of windows or maybe hanging themselves, quote unquote. Couple names are coming about through this basic trolling of us that the DOJ is doing. But still, as much as they're just giving us the finger by redacting absolutely every single page of hundreds-page-long documents, like they think it's funny, crossing out Donald Trump's name when it's obvious, and then even pulling back and releasing it and then taking it away. Giving us the finger is what they did. And they're breaking the law. But still, interesting information coming out. A trailer was just shown for the movie Melania. It's a documentary about Melania Trump. It cost $40 million to make. It's a documentary. Ken Burns documentaries, they're released in segments because they're so long. I mean, how long was his Civil War documentary? How long is his Vietnam War documentary? How long are Ken Burns documentaries? They're hours and hours and hours long. Extremely well researched, put out about an event that took place over years that's extremely complicated. And it takes him years to make these documentaries. And his budgets were record-breaking budgets at like $5 million. Yet this piece of crap movie that nobody's going to watch, apparently it's going to be released in theaters, and it's just about Melania Trump. And of course, they're going to have what's it called? The writing on the bottom of the screen. Why can't I think of that name of that? Wow, that's scary. Should I be operating equipment right now? No. Anyway, captions, closed captioning, because they claim she speaks 5 languages or something, and it's quite clear that English is not one of them. So this movie, it cost $40 million. It didn't. It's all a scam and a sham. Well, Brett Ratner is the director of that. Now, Brett Ratner basically got pushed out of the business of directing films back in 2014 because multiple women brought him to court, even as far as rape accusations, but sexual assault, things like that. Of course, he did. Anyone associated with the Trump family, a prerequisite is, have you raped anybody? Well, no. Okay, well, that we can maybe get you by, then we can maybe get you in the business here. Have you at least sexually assaulted somebody? Oh, well, yeah. Who hasn't? All right, welcome to the company. So Brett Ratner, the director of the big movie called Melania, is in the Epstein files, in photographs, and he's got his arm around, it's great friends with Jean-Luc Brunel, I think is how you say his name. He is now dead because he supposedly killed himself. He gained prominence by leading the international modeling agency Karen Models and founded MC2 Model Management with financing by Jeffrey Epstein. The subject of a 60 Minutes investigation in 1988, Brunel faced allegations of sexual assault spanning 3 decades. Now, this isn't Brett Ratner, the guy I just told you about. This is Jean-Luc Brunel. Brunel came under scrutiny for his ties to Epstein, with whom he worked from the early 2000s to 2015. Brunel was accused of grooming young females and of taking part in an alleged sex trafficking operation involving Epstein. In 2019, the French National Police launched an investigation on Brunel after he went into hiding following Epstein's death. He was arrested on the 16th of December 2020, and French prosecutors charged him with the rape of minors. However, he hanged himself in his cell before his trial could proceed. These are the kind of things that are being revealed, okay? They're doing all they can to protect Donald Trump, but they're still not covering up the information that will sink Donald Trump. All right, let's go through this list of this week. Starting on Sunday, we find out that the horribleness of Rob Reiner and his wife being murdered, apparently by their own son. A horrible tragedy. Everyone agrees. Everyone, and politically speaking, Rob Reiner was political. He involved himself in politics. So there are a lot of political views about him. But when it came down to this horrible, tragic death, the politics kind of went away, and everybody from everywhere in the political spectrum were saddened because everyone loves Rob Reiner's work. Everyone loves Rob Reiner's work. I myself last night watched A Few Good Men, and it's an incredible movie. And it was really fun to watch again, even though it's 33 years old now. Still stands up really great. Anyway, that horrible thing happens on Sunday, and then on Monday, Trump's reaction. I'm sure you've heard about it. It was absolutely disgusting, and it's more proof that he is not a human being. And if he once was, he is no longer. Probably because of dementia, but also, even if he was a human being at any point in his life, he has no empathy for any other human beings. He doubled down on it when asked about it later, and that did not help him. So immediately at the beginning of the week, Trump sinks himself even further than he already had been. Then on Tuesday, the Susie Wiles information comes out in Vanity Fair. A preview of a Vanity Fair article that's going to be coming out in its publication in the beginning of January. A preview of it came out with a bunch of quotes from Susie Wiles, who is Donald Trump's chief of staff. And she criticizes everything and everybody, including Donald Trump, and just the whole administration and the way they operate. It was astonishing. I think she heard it was coming out in January, and I think she thought, oh, everything will be okay by then. I won't have to worry. Except for this preview came out. So she, of course, said, oh, it's out of context. I didn't say that. She's going to be talking differently in January. Of course, that's speculation. But let's see what happens, right? How do you feel again? What do you think? Did what I just say make sense? Susie Wiles was told, oh, this is going to come out next January, 2026. She starts interviewing months ago, has 11 full interviews with the Vanity Fair guy. And she says all these things. But she's like, oh, it'll be okay if this comes out next January because Trump will be gone. The Trump administration will be gone. I will be set up then to show that I was not a part of this craziness. I was against it. I thought it was crazy as well. Please hire me to be your lawyer or whatever she thinks she's going to be, trying to save her career. But the preview came out on Tuesday, so then Trump's reaction is to have a crazy speech on Wednesday.
This'll make everyone stop thinking about your huge fuck up.
But it didn't, because he spent the whole time yelling at America saying,
shut up, piggies. Stop talking about all these things that I don't want you to be talking about.
He was yelling. A lot of people think it was AI because I don't think he's got the capability of being like that anymore. So I don't know. I think maybe it was at least assisted by AI. Everyone thought it was going to be such a distraction that he was going to declare war on Venezuela, which I'm convinced that I don't think he knows what the hell's going on in Venezuela. because he's been threatening to go to war. Other people have been threatening to go to war with Venezuela, and it's not happening and not happening and not happening, just like everything he does. So he does that speech. It further just scares everybody and makes everyone think he's crazy, go nuts. Also, a lot of Republicans joining with Democrats on a forced vote on ACA subsidies. That happens on Wednesday as well. Also on Wednesday, Jack Smith testifies in committee hearings behind closed doors. Representative Jamie Raskin was in those hearings, and he said if this was a public testimony, it would be absolutely more than devastating for Donald Trump. And that's why, of course, the Republicans wanted it behind closed doors. And usually when they do that behind closed doors, they immediately come out from those closed doors and start yelling into microphones about Jack Smith lied. He was. This is my Jim Jordan, JYM Jim Jordan. He was lying the whole time. He was obviously put up by Biden. Biden told him to say this. But where is Jim Jordan? He didn't speak into a microphone at all this week. He's not talking about Jack Smith's behind-the-scenes testimony. Jack Smith is urging him to release the video of said testimony. And Jack Smith will be able to start talking about the second part of his investigation, because this one was only about the first part, which has to do with the whole January 6th and trying to block the results of the 2020 election. The second part is the one about the Mar-a-Lago, all of the top secret information that you and I know goddamn well Trump kept so that he could sell it to our enemies, which you know good and goddamn well he did. How many CIA agents started to go missing, some of them then being told that they were ousted, they were outed somehow, and they barely left the country they're doing undercover work in with their life. You and I know Donald Trump sold that top secret information to our adversaries. You and I both know it. And so does Jack Smith. And that part of his report, I think, will be unleashed in the first or second week of January, when Eileen Cannon can no longer keep it under wraps. And we haven't even yet gotten to Friday of this fake Epstein files release and trolling of the United States, which is not going well for Donald Trump or Todd Blanche or Pam Bondi or Kash Patel. Dan Bongino is like, I ain't even going to be around for this. He left. What's he going to say? He apparently wants to get back to do his show. What's he going to say in his show? Wow. And where are we going to be by the time he gets his show back up and running? Where are we going to be when we have the longest period of light in a day this coming June in the Northern Hemisphere? Right now we have the longest period of the darkness tonight. And now things just get more and more light. The light is coming in more and more, pushing the darkness away. We can see it happening. It keeps going on in Ukraine as well. Underwater drones, Ukrainian underwater drones blew up a $500 million submarine that had warheads on it, apparently, or at least missiles on it. It was parked in what the Russians thought was a secure place. The Ukrainian underwater drones found it and blew it out of the water. It is now sitting on the bottom of the ocean, completely decimated. All of that is happening. Ukraine is still winning this war. Russia is losing it more and more. St. Petersburg was completely out of power and no internet. St. Petersburg, that's one of their largest cities. Money is a big problem. They're going broke. Listen to last week and the week before. I do reports on this every week that for some reason you can't find in the United States unless you go on YouTube and find alternative places. And those places are coming from usually Ukraine. This is what's going on. I think it's been proven that the leader of the Epstein empire did not die 6 years ago. And the power behind covering it up is still alive. That's why nobody's going against the boss, the guy who is running it. What's going to happen when he leaves planet Earth, which it's looking more and more apparent could happen at any moment? then what will happen to all of these worldwide power players who are in the Epstein files, who are trying to protect themselves, and probably a lot of the people who may not be in the Epstein files, like a lot of Republican elected officials and people on Trump's cabinet. Marco Rubio, why is he acting the way he's acting?
Marco, I need to have a meeting with you. Meet the other Don. Marco, it sure would be a problem if I'd hate to see beautiful daughter have something horrible happen to her. Yeah. Listen to your Dons, little Marco.
These are the things that are going on. So still, think about what you want the future to be. And you don't need to be afraid of all these things that are going on. You're not in the Epstein files. And you're not being threatened. And your family's not being threatened. You and I, we're far away from that darkness. Don't be afraid of what you're going to find out here in the near future. Take solace in the fact that it is all crumbling to the ground. It had to come to this so that we could recognize what needed to be gone, and now we can replace it. Trump's role in this movie is to be the villain. We needed it in this story. By the way, there's another... Okay, I'm going to take one a little bit longer here. Let's throw in another interesting story that I think will make you feel good. For all of Donald Trump's claims about transparency, there are a great many materials related to the president's record that he prefers to keep hidden. The target of one of his lawsuits wants to see some of those materials anyway, in response to a fight Donald Trump himself picked. If Donald Trump, this is a quote now, I think, from the Pulitzer Prize Board. If Donald Trump wants to sue the Pulitzer Prize Board for giving awards to journalism critical of his ties to Russia, he will have to cough up business records to prove he was harmed. The board filed demands for documents and information on Thursday in Florida that would force Trump to back up his defamation allegations. A board spokesperson said this in a statement. Just like any other plaintiff, the president must articulate and prove his claims with evidence. The Pulitzer Prize Board will not be cowed by the president's attempt to intimidate journalists or undermine the First Amendment. 7 years ago, the New York Times and the Washington Post received Pulitzer Prizes for their respective coverage of Trump's Russia scandal. And by any fair standard, the honors were well-deserved. The president naturally didn't quite see it in that way. In fact, the more he convinced himself the Russia scandal wasn't real, the more he appeared preoccupied with the awards. The Republican even pressed the board to reverse course and strip the newspapers of the honors, since, as far as Trump was concerned, the awards were in recognition of reporting on a scandal that had been discredited. Of course, the scandal has never been discredited. The Pulitzer board could have ignored him, but in an exceedingly generous move, it took Trump's complaints seriously and launched independent reviews of the newspaper's reporting. Predictably, they found that the Times and the Post were right. The Russia scandal was real. The reporting deserved to be honored, and none of the reporting had been discredited by facts that emerged subsequent to the conferral of the prizes. Unsatisfied with the board's annoying commitment to facts he doesn't like, Trump, 3 years ago this week, filed a defamation lawsuit against the Pulitzer Prize Board for honoring newspaper articles he disapproved of. The case has lingered in the background, but now it's reached the discovery phase, which is notable in large part because of the nature of the board's records request. As part of the legal process, the board's attorneys have said they're entitled to Trump's tax returns dating back to 2015 and medical records, including any possible psychological records. Again, quoting, to the extent you seek damages for any physical ailment or mental or emotional injury arising from the counts 1 through 4 of your complaint, all documents, whether held by you or by third parties under your control or who could produce them at your direction, concerning your medical and or psychological health from January 1st, 2015 to present, including any prescription medications you have been prescribed or have taken. That's what the board wrote in its latest legal filing. Going further, for the avoidance of doubt, this includes all documents concerning your annual physical examination. To the extent you do not seek such damages in this action, please confirm so in writing. What do you think Trump's going to do?
I was just kidding. I'm not really suing you anymore.
This is how you stand up to the bully. This is how you stand up to the mob boss. Mob bosses do go down eventually. Mob bosses are not omnipotent. Is that the right word? I don't know. Wow, sometimes I get in over my head when a word comes into my head and I'm like, I think I know what that means. Omnipotent. No, it's omnipotent. Anyway, I hope that story made you feel a little better. I think it's hilarious and good for the Pulitzer Prize Board for both awarding those papers for those stories and for standing up to the Don. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Let's stick together, keep each other sane through this transition. Wow. Have a great week. I hope you're spending it with the people that you love to be with the most. And thank you so much for listening. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.